Hi, I'm Madeline. I am a recent graduate, 2020 of Oberlin. I studied biology and environmental studies, and I'm the inaugural Shansi Fellow for the Keystone Foundation site in Southern India.
Thanks, Maddie. And Rex?
Hi, I'm Rex. I graduated from Oberlin in 2019. I majored in environmental studies and East Asian studies, and I am one of the two teaching fellows at Shansi Agricultural University.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rex. All right, well, so as I said, to start off, maybe we'll just have a few of the larger questions that came in, and there was one theme with a number of questions was the curiosity about what's the status of the fellowship program, where are the fellows located, are people all at home, is anyone out in the field, what's going on? So Ted, maybe if you could start us off with a quick overview of where the fellows stand right now. You see three of them here.
Oh, if I had 4 hours, I could fill every single second of that to talk about how amazing our fellows are. But because we actually have some fellows on the call, I'll keep this pretty brief. Currently, our fellows are all over the place geographically. We actually have 5 fellows who are in country right now. 3 are in Japan currently. 1 is in Taiwan. It's our new independent fellow, and it's our first fellow in Taiwan for quite some time. And we have 1 fellow who is currently based in Indonesia. The other 9 fellows are based in North America in various parts of the United States. For the most part, all of our fellows are engaging remotely with their host sites. So they're all working and they're all maintaining connections. In one case with our independent fellow in Taiwan, Taiwan is doing a pretty good job with the pandemic, and she is able to work in person to a certain extent. In terms of fellows being able to return to their sites, we're really taking a collaborative approach about it. We're putting our fellows kind of in the driver's seats. The basic philosophy that we have is if you are able to get a visa, if you're able to travel legally, and if your host is ready to accept you, we're willing to work with you to make whatever decision you want to go, whether that is to stay in the United States for a little bit longer or to travel in country. We understand that this needs to be an individualized process because each country has individualized circumstances dealing with public health. One of the things that I did not expect to be able to say today, but I'm really proud of, is that we have had 0 attrition. All of our fellows who signed up to be fellows are still fellows at the moment. And that's something that we're really proud of because it just shows the dedication that they have to this process and to our organization. I can tell you days and days worth of stories of how they are integrating the types of work that they're doing, but I think I will put a pin in that right now because I know that Madeline and Rex and Leah will also be talking about that a little bit. So we'll leave it there.
Thanks, Ted. That was great. So a corollary to that has been a couple of people ask questions about what Shansi's doing now, like what are our current programs all about, and specifically one question I thought was very relevant, considering we've got Madeline here, is Shansi doing more programs that are social oriented rather than teaching English? So I just want to highlight sort of a trend we have with our fellowships. And over the last 5 years, we've introduced 3 new fellowship programs that we view as responding to the different changing circumstances on campus here, different interests and needs of students, and also changing circumstances and opportunities in Asia. So 3 partnerships, long-term partnerships that we have that are non-teaching fellowships. So one is in Hiroshima, Japan, where we send fellows to work with a UN agency and 2 local NGOs. And the 3rd fellow now in that program is currently in Japan, actually in Tokyo, working remotely. This is also a partnership that brings some of that Hiroshima experience back here to Oberlin. And some of the folks on the line here have been to some of our tree planting ceremonies of trees and saplings grown from seeds that were survivor trees from the atomic bombing of Hiroshima. Second new program is the Independent Fellowship. And I think there were one or two former experimental fellows from the 1970s on the line here, sort of inspired by the experimental fellowship experience and the Watson fellowships. We've put together what we call the Independent Fellowship, and it's a design your own fellowship program. And we currently, as Ted mentioned, have our second independent fellow out in the field in Taiwan. So the first time Shansi's had a fellow in Taiwan in a few years. This year I've already had a real strong interest in terms of submissions of expressions of interest for our third round of the Independent Fellowship. So we're really excited about that. It's an opportunity for fellows to work with NGOs and other kinds of organizations in capacities that are quite directed towards career development, personal development, and so far very successful. The third new partnership that Madeline mentioned is with an organization called Keystone Foundation in Kotagiri in the mountains of Tamil Nadu province state in India. And you'll hear more about that from Madeline, but it's a really exciting environmental NGO that we're really thrilled to be able to work with in the coming years. So you can find out more about this if you go to our website, or if you check out some of the videos that we're starting to put up on YouTube, and in the annual report that you'll be able to access probably by next week, reflecting on the last year's program. So there's a lot of change going on, and a lot of really exciting new fellowship programs. So that speaks maybe to the next question a couple of people asked about, Ted, which is, what about recruitment? I mean, it's a crazy time. It's a time when it's hard to imagine being overseas, much less thinking about trying to apply for a 2-year fellowship to be in a place like India, Indonesia, China, or Japan. So, what are we seeing so far? Ted, can you update the group a little on that?
Yeah, I am pleasantly surprised by the amount of interest that Oberlin students and alumni are showing in doing this fellowship. We have pushed back our recruitment calendar a little bit this year in order to give us more time in order to assess public health situations in our various partner organizations, and we're moving full steam ahead. So normally our application deadline would be in October. This year it is in January, so I can't give you concrete numbers quite yet. But what I can say from the numbers that we do have is through expressions of interest for our independent fellowship. And we've had a record-breaking year. Granted, we've only been doing the independent fellowship recruitment for about 3 years, but the numbers that we've seen this year are exceptionally high. And we've had a lot of one-on-one conversations with Oberlin students who are really finding a renewed interest in Shansi and the work that we do. And that's something that we're absolutely thrilled about. So recruitment, knock on wood, so far is going really well.
Thanks, Ted. Finally, the last thing that Ted and I will talk about here is a couple people asked about, what about our partners? How are they doing? And what about all of the programs that involve engagement with people like visiting scholars who we bring to Oberlin, and engagement for faculty with our partner institutions. So I think, as you know, it varies from country to country, and it's a bit particularly difficult, I think, for our partners in India and Indonesia. We're really saddened that we have no visiting scholars here at present. It's making it a little lonely for Leah, who serves as the returned fellow and is living in Shansi House by herself. But we are optimistic. We're hopeful that the Beijing Normal University Chinese language teaching assistant, a fellow from BNU, will be able to arrive in late January, early February to take part in person in the Shansi, in the Oberlin spring semester. They have been supporting Chinese language learning remotely from Beijing in the first semester. And we're hopeful that we'll be able to do some recruitment this spring and summer for visiting scholars for the next academic year. And part of that too is this rethinking we were talking about before goes into our thinking about the visiting scholars program down the road. So traditionally, and we'll continue to do this, we bring in people from the academic partner institutions, but as we develop these more deeply rooted partnerships with NGOs and non-academic institutions, we really want to look at opportunities to bring activists, to bring staff of these partner NGOs, to bring sometimes maybe even community members in the communities they serve to the US and to Oberlin as well, but for more participatory and experiential learning opportunities rather than academic opportunities. So that's something maybe to keep your eye on in the coming 12 to 18 months, but it's something I hope we'll be able to talk to you about a lot in the coming years. So that's a brief overview of that. And let me sort of shift gears now and start turning to Leah and Maddie and Rex. And a lot of the initial questions we received from people during registration focused on wondering what it is that our fellows are doing, and what's going on with remote work, and how are you experiencing these fellowships in this period of the pandemic. So maybe if we could turn to Rex to start us off. Rex, can you tell us a little bit about what's going on with teaching students in China that you've never even met? You haven't been there yet, but you're teaching quite a few of them online. Could you give us a little bit of an idea of what your teaching experience has been like so far?
Sure. So yes, I have a lot of students. I have 250 graduate students at Shansi Agricultural University. And overall, the experience has been much more pleasant than I expected. Not that I was really dreading it or anything, but teaching that many students, I anticipated to be much more drudgerous than it has been. But basically, how my curriculum works is they've shortened their semester, so it's 10 weeks. And I hear that all of my students have 6 or 7 classes in addition to my course. So I assume that this is one of the last things that everybody has on their mind when they're going through their environmental engineering or horticulture programs at the university. But yeah, I post a 30 to 45-minute lecture on like 10-cent Drive, which is like a Google Drive kind of thing, and I post a homework assignment or a quiz that is written usually, but the class that I'm teaching is an oral English class that's supposed to be like for casual spoken English, which is quite difficult to teach when we don't have any like Zoom classes. It's all asynchronous teaching. So some of the other fellows at the site recommended that I do some sort of like, we have like a weekly attendance assignment where they have to record themselves speaking into a microphone and respond to like an attendance question that's related to the topic using select grammar or vocabulary patterns that I have provided. And then they each have a discussion partner or a small group, which is usually, so all of the students are on campus this year at Shansi Agricultural University. So usually their partners are like their roommates, or maybe a friend that they met on the first day or something, or a couple of people that they meet outside or in a very small group or a conference call on the phone. And they have a discussion prompt that's related to the material, and they're supposed to practice about 10 to 20 minutes a week. And they send me either a screenshot of the phone call that they had just to prove that they did it, or they send me a picture of themselves together. And those assignments have actually been really interesting because hearing what all their opinions on these issues actually has been like an unexpectedly fascinating part of teaching so far. But yeah, and then other than that, it's pretty straightforward. It's a lot of grading, but I have really actually enjoyed the freedom of designing the curriculum and the engagement from the students so far. So that's just a quick overview.
It's fascinating, Rex, and those are big classes that our fellows at Shansi Agricultural teach. Leah, what about you? You spent last semester at JF Oberlin University teaching remotely after 3 semesters as a fellow, a year and a half, actually seeing your students in person. What was the experience like for you? What really stood out, and how did it go?
Yeah, I mean, I think I feel really lucky for having had those 3 semesters where I could teach on in person, just because, yeah, I just had all that time to kind of get used to what it was like to teach. But transitioning online, I admit I was really anxious at first because we had to do synchronous 200-minute classes, and that's just like a lot of time to be in Zoom. On Zoom with like your students, but unlike Rex, I only had, I think, about 50 students total. So I think it's a pretty different situation. But I think also I was really lucky because Oberlin already has so much of the curriculum on Moodle. So it was actually a really easy transition to be able to work from Moodle. I like set up a Google Drive situation so that students could really easily turn in assignments. But otherwise, it honestly wasn't that big of a transition in a way, because everyone had to do it. And there was a lot of support with the professors. A professor set up like a teaching online help session. I see Cassie's here, and like Cassie was a pretty active member of that too in Japan. And so there was just a lot of support. And I was really fortunate too, because all of my students would turn on their videos, which I also think is like a rare thing when you're just speaking to a bunch of names, but I could see everybody's faces. So yeah, I think I had a really positive experience teaching online. So yeah, of course, I wish I'd gotten to meet them in person, but yeah, I don't know. Sorry, that's all I really have to say.
Leah, I recall from your reporting and some of the other Japan fellows, and this is maybe something that'll make sense to the former JF Oberlin fellows, Obidin fellows who are online, there's a few of them, is that it's sometimes the classroom management can be pretty challenging there. Students resting during class or feeling challenged. And what several of you told me that you actually thought your students were more engaged during the Zoom classes than during regular time. Was that the case?
Yeah, actually, thanks for bringing that up, Gavin. Yeah, I think regularly in in-person classes, maybe 2, 3, 7 students would be like asleep at some point. And so I think when they're online with their videos on, they were actually present. I don't think I ever had to call anybody out for sleeping. And honestly, attendance was really good too. So I think overall, actually, that was an interesting thing at OBD, where in general, the grading system, you kind of have, it's worked out in percentages, but everyone across the board was doing so well, they had to kind of rework how they graded all students for the English department. So yeah, I think I tried to be as energetic as possible, even if it was very silent. And I think that some students appreciated that and it went okay. So yeah.
That's great. Thanks, Leah. Well, why don't we turn to Madeline? Madeline, I'm curious what, maybe you can tell the group a little bit about what your experience has been, new fellow with a new partner. What has it been like to engage remotely? What have you been working on? How has that been going? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I haven't met my mentors from the Keystone Foundation in person, but we kind of started off right on the bat in September, connecting and starting projects together. So one of the first project they gave me was to edit a book that they're hoping to publish on the sustainable use of natural resources in relationship to conservation in India, and how that kind of the traditional ideas of conservation where humans aren't touching the resources is kind of can be seen in a different light, where using resources actually can be an incentive for conservation. So I've been working on this book for a while now, kind of editing all of the different chapters, feeling like I don't have any expertise in that area. So it was interesting to start off kind of editing a book as my first project. But I've been working on that book for a while and have put together the manuscript that we're hoping to send to the publisher. And I think it's about 200 pages, so that's really exciting. I've also been converting some of the case study chapters into smaller articles for the International Union for the Conservation of Nature website, so the IUCN website, for kind of fact sheets that people can easily digest when they're looking for examples of sustainable use and conservation around the world. And I am also working to try to figure out how to publish some of the chapters of the book online on the Keystone Foundation website, or how to advertise that book, so we can start the conversation about sustainable use and conservation within India, which is something that apparently hasn't really come up in the literature and in the scientific community. And then, yeah, that's kind of been the main project I've been working on, but I'm also starting a database management project as well. And we're gathering a bunch of data on uncultivated foods and agricultural processes from different villages that the Keystone Foundation works with. and putting that all into this big database to kind of eventually create these traditional ecological calendars full of all of this knowledge that the villagers have kind of lived through. So documentation of that as well.
Thanks, Madeline. Well, one thing that sort of strikes me from this conversation is that there's a little, you're sort of experiencing your partners in different ways. I'm curious what you've observed. I mean, maybe this is for Madeline and Rex, it's a little too early even to be asking you this, and Leah sort of hinted at this, but what have you observed about how each of your sites themselves are adapting to remote learning? Do you think that this is something that they're going to continue with? And frankly, it's a question Ted and I are thinking about a lot about in terms of how we engage and how we might in the future use some of these tools that we're all developing and processes to actually foster some new avenues for engagement between Oberlin and our partners here with the partners in Asia. So I'm curious what you're seeing about, do you see them adapting as well? I mean, Leah mentioned this a little bit in terms of putting resources online. Madeline, how do you feel like, do you feel like they're getting pretty good at working remotely like this?
I guess I'll jump in. I mean, I haven't been there, for this current semester, but I think that it sounded like they were planning on doing it even in the spring, and maybe Cassie would know more at this point, but that there was like, if it was working out and if the students were doing that much better, that it wasn't like they were going to try to rush at least the English classes, like things that were, you were able to do online pretty easily. I don't know what art classes and things that are a little bit more, it just more you get to more tangible, but I'm not really sure, honestly. Madeline?
Yeah, I am also not sure exactly how the office is working right now, but I know that a number of, most of the meetings have been held online with staff members going into the office occasionally, selectively. But I have heard recently that from my mentors that they are starting to travel a bit more and to begin field work again, because India is starting to do some opening up in terms of trying to get the economy to keep running. So things are opening up even if really important precautions are still being taken around the virus.
Ted, I mean, Ted said you're in the middle of these conversations with all of our fellows, are any interesting things you're seeing or patterns or trends you're seeing with fellows at all these other sites that are working remotely, or in the case of Taiwan and Japan, the fellows, how they're working on site and what that means for their sort of team building and engagement?
Yeah, I think any type of commentary to offer about our host organizations in general might be a little bit more than I can offer right now. But what I can do is let you know what fellows are telling me and how they're engaging with their sites. And I think one of the great things about this group of fellows, present company included, is that they're finding ways to engage and to really make that impact, even though they're sometimes half a planet away. One great example is Kate Little, our Lady Doak fellow. Kate, Lady Doak has, taken a pretty hard hit with COVID-19, and Kate has found it much more productive to work with really engaged students. And she has been able to create a team around her of engaged students who can help continue the functions, to continue the initiatives of the International Studies Center, and is almost taking it into a more grassroots level than we would normally see, where the students are the ones who are providing the ideas, and they're creating seminars and they're creating workshops based on student interest, which I think is really fascinating that she is able to do now during this time. But we see that all of our fellows are finding ways to engage. Some of them through more formal curricular activities, whether that's teaching or whether that's through a formal co-curricular activity. And then for our fellows who are not working at teaching sites, Leo Anderson comes to mind, who is our new Hiroshima fellow. Leo's involved in all kinds of work in Hiroshima with the 3 organizations that they work with. And they are doing a little bit more writing and editing now than before, but because they were an artist, they were doing some design work in the past and really picking up new skills. They designed a chat bot feature, and I don't know what a chat bot is, but they designed a chat bot for the UNITAR website. I mean, this is a UN agency, and they figured it out. What I'm trying to get at is that our fellows are really, really adaptable, flexible, and good at solving problems. And they've proven that time and time again. And it's kind of humbling to be on this end of the equation in order to see what they're actually able to accomplish, because I know for sure that I would not be able to design some of the things that they're doing. So
Thanks, Ted. You know, we talked about the chat feature being a way for you guys to throw questions our way, but I was just reviewing it, and then all of you might enjoy reading through there, because it actually seems to be functioning more as a wonderful forum for sharing of anecdotes and stories among Shansi alums. So I'll try to pick out the questions as they come through, but everyone might want to check out some of the stories and references that are there. Thank you all for contributing. It's really, really fun to read those. Ted mentioned at the beginning that we're really fortunate and feel privileged that the Shansi Fellows are sticking with the fellowship, at least for now. And I'm so overwhelmed by that. I think it's been such a year for these new incoming fellows who started out 2020, you know, and at the end of the year, they were thinking they'd be out in Asia for about 4 months or 6 months by now. And they've been so incredibly adaptable and resilient, doing language study remotely. I mean, everyone's done language study that was supposed to, just doing it remotely. And as Ted said, you heard about Rex, hasn't been on the ground at Shansi Agricultural University, but teaching so much. So I guess I wanted to throw sort of a challenging question to our 2 new fellows, Madeline and Rex, and sort of ask you, why you're sticking with this so far. It's even though you're working remotely, and we're all sitting here thinking we don't know when it'll be possible for you to get to your sites. We hope it'll be relatively soon, but we can see what's happening in the world, in the US. And maybe if you could reflect a little bit for the group on why you're doing this and why you're sticking it out. And I'd love to hear from both of you if you're comfortable talking about that.
Sure, I can start. To be honest, I'm just so grateful to have a job with flexible hours and employment that's remote. It's really quite a blessing these days for someone my age to be able to have a gig that feels productive, at least. But I really also think that the experience has just been very valuable professionally for me. I mean, I think now that I've started teaching, even though I'm just lecturing alone, I think I found more joy in it than I expected. And I don't know if that would have happened the same way if it was in person. So I've seen some professional growth in myself, at least in designing this curriculum and monitoring my, putting things in from my own perspective with no one else around, and I think that there's been a lot of value in that also. And then, I've keeping my fingers crossed too that I will eventually get to go on site also. But those are the big 3, I would say. Big 3 reasons.
Yeah, I chose Shansi to do this Shansi Fellowship because the Keystone Foundation was like the most ideal environmental organization I found out there to work with so far. And it's been a really incredible learning experience, just kind of having projects to manage and to work with that I didn't expect, and am learning to develop so many new skills right out of college that I just didn't expect to have, and to have the opportunity to develop. So I'm really grateful for this experience, and I'm learning a lot, and I'm really, really enjoying working with my mentors and partners at Keystone. I think the biggest thing that I'm looking forward to is just meeting everyone there. And I think the thing that's really keeping me going is just the encouragement from my mentors at Keystone, who are just really excited and always express their excitement during our meetings to have me there. So kind of having that encouragement from them is really giving me hope, even if I can't be there right now.
Thanks, Madeline and Rex. That was really nice to hear, and it's good to hear your energy is still up for this. It's been a hard 6 months or more, hard almost a year now for you and for everyone. All right, why don't we turn to Leah for a quick question? And this I'll say is you're sort of in an interesting position, right? We heard about your time in sort of the COVID period in Tokyo, and now you're here, and made the transition from fellow to the return fellow. What's it been like to sort of be doing this and sticking around the Shansi group through such an unusual and challenging time? Any reflections on what it's like being a return fellow in Big Bad Shansi House?
Well, as thinking about this question, it just is like, I don't know what it's like to be a return fellow in any other time. And it's just such a strange, it's just a strange period for everyone right now. I don't think anyone is feeling like life or anything is normal. So, but I think that if I'm grateful that I'm a pretty private, introverted person. I think the whole being alone in the Shansi house is actually bearable because of that. Also really bearable because I think that Gavin, Ted, and Jessica, all three of you have been a very, very supportive team to just kind of jump right into. And I see Eli's here too, and his guidance before I started this job. I think all of that really helped with the transition. Also a big part of, I think, why being here is comfortable, because I grew up here and my family is also here. So I think that there's really not a better place for me personally to be during these times. And I hope that a visiting scholar can come if that's what is safest and best for that person. But that part of the job, I guess, is something I won't really get to experience in full swing. Otherwise, I think maybe some of you saw, I was able to put together a video, which was nice, and hear from current and past fellows and just try to capture more or less the fellowship experience. And all of those were interviews that the fellows did themselves, they recorded them themselves. And I think maybe that isn't something I would have necessarily thought of if COVID wasn't happening. We kind of I kind of would restrict myself to thinking I had to do in-person interviews. So I think being able to expand that a little bit and storytelling that Shansi is capable of right now has been kind of an interesting thing. So I don't know if there's anything. It's been really nice being a part of the Shansi team in a new capacity other than a fellow.
Well, thanks for bringing up the video, Leah. And so let me make a little pitch for Shansi's social media and multimedia expansion. And Ted has really driven us in this direction. So if you're on Instagram, it's a really fun place to be on the Shansi page, because our fellows are taking it over most of the time. And so posting from the field, posting from wherever they are. Leah's got charge of it this week. Next week, Sheng Kao, who's our independent fellow in Taiwan, will be posting from Taiwan on the Instagram. So head over there, Instagram.com. It was intimidating for me, but I've managed to make myself a little bit manageable on social media. And then, as Leah mentioned, we got some fun multimedia stuff up on Shansi's YouTube page now. Leah just did this wonderful fellowships video. And we also have a couple of videos about our Visiting Scholars program that were posted earlier this year and late last year, talking about especially and I noticed that Paul from American College is online here, the Lady Doe College Visiting Scholars sort of history. So it might be fun for everybody to check out if you have some time over the holidays. So it's been we've been getting kind of serious here. So maybe I'll challenge our three fellows to tell us something funny or memorable related to your work the last few months. Any anecdote that might raise our spirits a little bit and make us giggle a bit while we're sitting here on a Thursday evening. Maybe Rex, do you want to start us off? Are you comfortable getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I've shared this with the people, the other fellows and Shansi members on the panel, but one of the things I didn't really expect to happen was to kind of become online pen pals with a lot of my more involved students, I guess. So I've just been getting, every day I get at least a dozen WeChat messages, just people asking me all sorts of questions and just very eager to chat in English, um, which I think a lot of students feel more comfortable with in that way. But I've also been getting a lot of great gifs and pictures of things that people eat. I don't. It's just you know, a new way that we can kind of expand the oral English curriculum, I guess. But another more memorable thing, I think, is around the time of the election. A lot of the students were asking me questions about who I voted for, what it was like in the country, what I thought of the election. And, you know, I'll probably never forget being on a Zoom meeting with 30 students and being like, "Did you vote for Joe Biden?" And I was like, yes. I don't, kind of hesitating to share more given the circumstances. But yeah, very, very memorable nonetheless.
Leah, Madeline, one of you like to have anything to share?
Sure, I can jump in. I on a number of my meetings now online with my mentors, they have had to interrupt our call to go chase monkeys out of their house, and I've always found that pretty entertaining. Hopefully that'll happen to me one day. And yeah, and I'm continuing Tamil lessons, language lessons with another mentor from Keystone, and we've been exchanging fun videos of her cats and different artwork that she's been working on. So it's been a really fun time, just even outside of work, to be messaging up my mentors.
Oh, yeah. I think this is a moment that I've been thinking about a lot, because I was actually taking a couple classes at Oberlin this semester as a student, and because it made me more empathetic to the professors that I had. But there was a time when I was teaching, and I can't remember exactly the circumstances, but basically they let them out into breakout rooms and everybody's coming back, and I was trying to I was explaining something for a while, and just like getting really just like no reactions. I was like, okay, it's fine, but I'm pretty animated when I teach, and I have these like little stuffed animals that I bring. It sounds cheesy, but after about 5 minutes, suddenly like a student was like, hey, you're on mute. And it was just like, it had just been so long that they'd let me just gesture while I was on mute, and no one said anything. And I was really embarrassed. But it also, I think, just kind of was like a perfect, like, you know, you guys are way too shy now. If you ever do that again to me, like, you know, anyways, but now when I see a professor who is on mute and trying to speak, I like immediately try and say it so that they don't have to go through that embarrassing long mute session. But yeah.
There seems to be an active discussion of monkeys now on the chat. So Madeline, I think your experience is one that's been shared by other South India fellows over the years. All right, I feel like maybe Madeline and Leah and Rex need a breather for a second. So we did have a couple of sort of bigger picture questions that people asked. And one was about China. How have US-China relations affected Shansi participation in China? And I'm a little embarrassed to try to address this when we've got people like Tom Gold and Evan Dolly and Manfred Elstrom on the line and others who are China experts. And I'm just a guy who used to live there and has opinions that are not supported by anything but my own emotions. But I think it's a really challenging and difficult time. It is a time when we have a very open, I think, relatively open and good relationship with our partner at Shansi Agricultural University. And, you know, they're willing through WeChat audio messages to be pretty frank with Ted and me. They don't like to use email, but they do like to use WeChat audio messages. And they're very enthusiastic about having the fellows back on site. And I think we're really excited for a time when they'll be able to travel there and safely return. So we're quite optimistic that long term the Shansi relationship with our partner and in Shanxi and in Beijing will be a positive one. But there's no doubt that this is a really challenging time, and this is a time when there are questions about the kinds of environments our fellows will face and how we prepare them for being confronted with questions not just about the American election, but about Xinjiang and Hong Kong, and we want to be very careful that we're operating in a way that we can be proud of, but also that allows our fellows to be safe and secure in that environment. So I'm confident and have a very strong faith in the long-term arc of U.S.-China relations. But we're in a really difficult time from both sides, and I'm encouraged that we still have, for example, even very strong overtures of interest from other partners in Asia to engage with our partners in China. Ted and I, over the last 2 years, have tried to help bring Lady Doe College together with some of our friends in China, because they're very interested in promoting study of China on their campus. And as we all know, that's becoming more challenging right now. So I guess the answer to how is it affected it is so far not really. And I think those of us who've lived in China through difficult times in U.S.-China relations, and I see Bill and Elena Spidel are on the line right now, and know better than anyone, from the arc of the Peace Corps history in China, that we're in a very difficult time. But I think for Shansi and the kinds of deep-rooted relationship we have in Taegu with a partner that feels that same deep-rooted relationship very strongly, I think we'll be able to weather that. For the broader U.S.-China relationship, I have real concerns about what some of the rhetoric and is going to do to the status and situation of America universities welcoming Chinese students. And I hope that when we reflect back on this 5 years from now, we'll have seen this as a blip, because I think it's a crucial part of the relationship, but it's worrying. The other question that came up online recently that I saw earlier was from Nelson De Jesus, a partner in crime for many years on all these things, as Shansi board chair and a part of our fellowships team for so many years. And Nelson asked about the college's new global health program. And as some of you who get the emails from Oberlin College may have seen, that there are a couple of new initiatives, a business program concentration, and also a global public health concentration. And there is quite a range of Shansi alumni who've worked in the public health field, and we've had career panels with public health specialists here. So many Shansi fellows, even in just my 7.5 years here, have gone on to health and public health careers. It's actually a very rich part of the alumni experience for us, and a very strong interest for a lot of our fellows. And interestingly, many of them develop those while they're out in the field. So we're excited to work closely with the global public health concentration. There are ways we can do that through Shansi's in Asia grants as well. Some of you may know about these short-term grants that we make to first, second, and third year students for projects in Asia. It's not happening right now for obvious reasons, and it won't happen again until the public health situation improves globally and Oberlin College starts permitting international study abroad programs. It might be another year, but we've been very hopeful and been pushing very hard with both environmental studies majors, and now I expect with the global public health concentration, to support initiatives for programs and projects for those students through our In Asia Grants program, and also through possibly the independent fellowship program, and also through some of our NGO partnerships. So yeah, Nelson, absolutely. I think it's crucial, and I'm really excited about this new initiative. All right. Why don't I throw another question back at the fellows? We prepped them a little bit for this one, but there were questions. A couple of people asked questions in the registration form about, what we think. I think the perspective that the question was from was asking Ted and me to talk about what we see as the biggest goals, hopes, or aspirations fellows have, and how they changed since the pandemic came. And I think implicit in that also is people wondering how much they've changed since they were fellows. But I'd actually like to not say anything about that, but ask Madeline and Leah and Rex maybe to tell us a little bit about just that. You know, what are your some of your goals and hopes? What are your aspirations for the fellowship? And you know, whether it's been upended a little bit by COVID-19, you know, how are you thinking about that and how it's evolving for you as you think about how the next year and a half, year and 3/4 might go for you as Shansi Fellows? And since Rex I put on the spot last time first, I don't know, Madeline, would you be comfortable starting off by reflecting a little bit there?
Yeah, sure. I think as of now, my main goal is to just get there, get to my site as soon as possible. We'll see when that happens. But I think for me, the biggest thing that I've been missing out on is the field work, going into the villages with my mentors and speaking to people, taking survey data, just interacting with the communities that Keystone works with is something that I'm really missing, and I'm happy to be on the kind of data side of it and to see what all of the answers are from people that they've talked to. But it's definitely, I think that's one of the main experience points that I'm missing right now, being in the US still. I'm also, Keystone Foundation is such a huge organization with so many different facets of work that they do, whether it's like community health and well-being to organic agriculture to conservation and biodiversity restoration. So just learning more about all of those different kind of groups within the organization and meeting all of the members of each of those different teams and seeing how I can contribute to their work and support them in kind of all of these realms of conservation that are all interconnected, but also all very different, and I don't know a lot about so many of them. So I'm interested to continue learning a lot more about the organization and the work that they do and all of the people that contribute to the work. And yeah, I also have just kind of been looking through the site guide that's been made for my site. I've been in contact with the Lady Doak fellow recently, and she sent me the site guide for the Kotagiri site. And so I've been looking through that, and I'm also, one of my goals is to continue adding to that and exploring new places to go and new things to see that I can add to that for future fellows.
Thanks, Madeline. And actually, Kate helped to prepare that. Fellows collaborate. We actually dispatched Kate Little from Madurai back before the world changed, and she went to Kotagiri, about a 6-hour bus ride away, to spend the weekend meeting with a partner and investigating the site and preparing the site guide for it. So fellows are very useful when they're out in the field. I don't know, Rex, did you have anything you wanted to say about this, or you could reflect on a little bit?
Yeah, sure. I think one of my initial goals, which is still a goal contingent on that I can go next year on site, maybe, but I was interested in language proficiency originally. I think that was something I was looking at when I first applied for the fellowship. Fortunately, I have been able to keep up my Chinese a little bit with my aunt Kiki Spidel, who is in the audience of this call at the moment. But I think my goals for the next year of the fellowship have shifted a little bit. The more I kind of delve into this semester of teaching, I think thinking about how I would explain it to someone when I was trying to get a job at a later point in life it's pretty. I think the fact that all of the fellows at Shansi pretty much design their curriculums from scratch and like kind of are pretty resourceful with their teaching methods. I think it's a huge pitch, I guess, that for the futures that I was, able to kind of create this lecture and manage all of these assignments and do all of it online with no, pretty much no experience in that regard. So I guess that's less of a goal, but I think that either way this fellowship ends up, it's very applicable in the future. especially for anything related to teaching. It's just a huge boost. So that's kind of where I'm at the moment.
Good. Thanks, Rex. It's good to see your tutor is online here with us as well. So I see her on there.
He wears many hats.
One of the things that's really great is seeing so many Shansi alumni from different generations here and different sites and in different career fields. And one of the things that we've been badgering our alumni base about over the last year or year and a half has been this new alumni mentorship program that Ted has been spearheading, and it grew out of a lot of interest from our current and recent fellows in how they could access our sort of alumni to learn more about career opportunities. And it also reflected a lot of generosity and spirit from all of our alumni, or many of our alumni, who were always willing to respond. So we did a very interesting survey of alumni, fellowship alumni last summer, and that led to some great outreach opportunities with students here on campus this year, and then led to this idea for an alumni mentorship program. So a couple people in the prelims were asking a little bit about what this is and what opportunities there are. So maybe I could turn it over to you, Ted, for just a minute to tell the group a little bit about what's going on and maybe inspire some of you to be interested in joining in too, either as mentees or mentors moving forward.
Yes, absolutely. I will keep this brief because we're going to have a more formal announcement coming out next week, actually, to formally launch the program. So please keep your eyes open for that. And I can't move forward without giving a special shout out to Olivia Hay, who's on this call, a Lady Doak Fellow from 2017 to 2019. She actually joined Shansi's staff as an intern this summer to help spearhead this initiative. And we think that there's no better way than talking about alumni mentorship than getting a young alum who would potentially be on both ends of the spectrum, to be able to be a mentor and to be able to be a mentee, to be able to give some insights on this. Just so you know, career readiness has always been a really important goal of Gavin and mine for our fellows and for our recent alumni. And that's something that we take seriously. And till now, we've been offering a lot of, services one-on-one, advising, helping people with resumes. But we're a staff with 3 full-time staff members and 1 returned fellow who's there 9 months a year. So we have our limitations. And we have such an incredible alumni community that does so much and that are so generous. And it just made a lot of sense to formalize a program where fellows could, have an easier path to networking, to learning new skills and hearing about other people's experiences. One of the things that we want to do is to have alumni-led career panels and workshops to happen annually. And we've also started to set up an alumni directory where our alumni share a little bit about their career paths and trajectories. And it makes it just easier for younger fellows and for younger alumni to be able to reach out and connect with them. So we see this as a community-based effort. This is not just like a program, with rigid structures. And we hope to see how this grows, but please keep an eye out for an announcement sometime pretty soon.
Thanks, Ted. Okay, I'm conscious of the fact that my computer's clock reads 7:57, and we told you we'd stick till 8 o'clock. So let me close first with a thank you to Ted for that discussion of the alumni mentoring program, and also to note that it is the giving season, and some of you have been probably getting our outreach emails last week from me, this week from Leah, and just as a highlight, next week from someone else. But I do hope you'll consider Shansi in your end of year donation plans. We can use the support. And as we noted in our first letter, it was so important to our being able to sustain our programs through the COVID-19 period. And we really appreciate all the support we get from the Shansi community. It means a lot, and it's critical to our continued programs. So thank you all very much. And thank you for joining us today. It's really wonderful to see how many people joined. I was keeping track. We had at our peak, I think 54 or 55, and we still have 46 of you online now. So thank you so much. for joining us and for offering these wonderful stories in the chat. I'm really glad I'll be able to save the chat when this is over. And thank you very much to Leah, to Madeline, to Rex, and to Ted for and Jessica behind the scenes, the Shansi team, for making all this happen. It was really wonderful to hear the stories, and like I said, really wonderful to hear what some of you all had to say on the chat. So thank you very much. Have a wonderful holiday season. Have a great new year. Stay safe and healthy, and we'll let you know about the next one of these we'll hope to do early in 2021. So thank you very much.